My name is Elise Corbin, and I've spent most of my adult life building things for other people. Quietly, invisibly. I was the one who co-signed the lease, designed the first logo, funded the website, and wrote the mission statement for the dojo my little sister now calls her empire. Last month, she stood in the middle of that dojo during an open class, flipped her perfect ponytail, and said with a smile, "She just helps clean the mats." Everyone laughed. Then her fiancé Cade, black belt, golden boy, local hero, gestured to me in front of the whole room and said, "Every dojo needs a punching bag." Before I could even react, he swept my leg. I hit the mat hard. More laughter. His smirk burned hotter than the bruise blooming on my hip. What they didn't expect was that I got back up. And 14 seconds later, I left him flat on his back, gasping for air, while the class stared in stunned silence. But that moment, the win, the cheer, it wasn't the real story. The real story started long before that. Back when I believed loyalty meant silence. Back when I thought being overlooked was the price of being the dependable one. Back when I still thought they saw me as family. They didn't. And this is how I made sure they'd never forget me again. I was never supposed to be the face of anything. Not in our family, not in business, not even in the photos framed above our mother's mantle. That role belonged to Morena. She was the standout, the one who took up space and sunlight without asking for permission. And I was the one who made sure the roof didn't leak while she danced in the spotlight. When she first came to me about starting her own dojo, she was 23 and full of buzzwords. Community, empowerment, legacy. I listened, nodded, and 2 weeks later, I cashed out half my savings to help her secure the space. The landlord wouldn't sign off without credit history and collateral. She had neither. I had both. So I signed. That first winter, we painted the walls ourselves. I traced the Apex logo onto the drywall, using a projector and a roll of painter's tape. She posted selfies in her GI while I adjusted the lighting to make the mats look less gray on camera. Every interview, every press piece, every photo shoot, they were all about Morena. I stayed behind the lens, behind the curtain, where it was easier to be useful and harder to be questioned. I told myself I didn't need the spotlight, that my name on a lease and a tax form was enough, that building something was more important than being seen for it. But the truth is, over time, being erased feels like rot. Quiet, creeping, corrosive. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, until one day, your name isn't even on the emergency contact list for the business you helped open. And you start to wonder if you ever existed in the story at all. The first time Cade humiliated me in class, it wasn't an accident. It was theater, a performance designed not to teach, but to remind everyone of their place, especially me. It was a Saturday demo class, packed wall to wall with new parents and wide-eyed kids. I was setting up the drink station, smoothing out paper cups that read Coach Morena and Coach Cade in bold black font. There were no cups with my name. There never were. Cade stood in the center of the mat with his usual swagger, all effortless grins and overplayed charm. "Let's demo a reversal," he announced. Then he scanned the room until his eyes locked on me. "Elise," he called out like he was selecting a volunteer at a magic show, "come up and help me out. We'll go easy." I stepped forward slowly, already knowing what was coming. He nodded, then without warning, swept my front leg in a clean takedown. I landed hard. The mat slapped against my back and knocked the air out of my lungs. I heard laughter ripple through the room. Parents, students, even a few staff members. Cade didn't offer a hand. He just turned to the class and said, "See? That's what happens when you skip the basics." I lay there longer than I needed to, not because I was hurt, but because something inside me cracked, and I needed a second to collect what spilled out. Later that night, a video appeared on Apex's official Instagram account. It was a clip of that exact moment. My fall, Cade's joke, the laughter. The caption read, "Know your fundamentals. Learn from real-life examples." It had over 6,000 views by morning. I stared at it in silence. When I asked Morena about it, she replied with a shrug and a text. "Cade posts whatever drives engagement. It's nothing personal." But it was. Every second of that video, every comment that called me a charity case or a midlife hobbyist, Every time someone tagged me with a laughing emoji, it was personal. It was a message. I wasn't just forgotten. I was made into the joke. I almost quit. The Monday after the demo class, I sat in my car outside the dojo for 22 minutes. The engine was still running. My hand hovered over the gear shift. I had already written a message on my phone. Taking a break. Hope the grand opening goes well. Thanks for everything. That version of me, the dependable, invisible older sister, nearly tapped send and drove away from everything I had built. But I didn't. I turned off the ignition, stepped out, walked in through the back like I always did. Inside, it smelled like eucalyptus cleaner and old ambition. I stocked the fridge, wiped counters, took inventory of hand wraps. Morena walked by at one point, laughing with Cade. She didn't look at me. Cade raised a brow like he barely remembered my name. That night, while paying bills online, I noticed something odd. Apex Systems Consulting won $150. I clicked on the vendor name. It wasn't new. The charge had posted on the 2nd of every month, for nearly 2 years. I scrolled backward through the ledger, my chest getting tighter with each line. Same name, same day, same amount, like clockwork. The name rang a bell. Apex Systems Consulting. That wasn't the dojo's storefront name. It was the back-end LLC I'd quietly helped Morena register years ago so she could look more legitimate in early investor talks. I had paid the filing fee, pulled the EIN, wrote the business description myself. That memory hit like a slap. I left the computer and climbed up to my closet, dragging down the fireproof lockbox I hadn't opened in over a year. Inside were folders I thought I'd never need again. Tax forms, contracts, the lease I co-signed, and buried beneath all that, a stapled packet titled Capital Contribution and Silent Partner Agreement. My name was on the front page, my handwriting, my signature. The document was clear. I had contributed 33% of the startup capital in exchange for a silent ownership stake. Non-voting, non-withdrawable without mutual consent, quarterly reporting required. I'd never received a single report. I flipped to the last page, where Morena's handwriting curled in pink gel pen. Just a formality, Elise. You're the best. That phrase used to make me feel appreciated. Now it read like a smirk. I stared at the agreement for a long time, each word like a needle. I remembered staying up late adjusting the dojo's first website, editing grant proposals, fixing Morena's pitch decks at midnight, paying her credit card balance just so she wouldn't default before a press interview. And now, this. A contract that erased my name from every photo, but not from every debt. I needed answers, and I needed them clean. The next morning, I drove 2 towns over to meet with Regina Dorsey, a CPA recommended by one of my trauma recovery clients. Her office was quiet, lined with 3-ring binders and the steady scent of lemon polish. She didn't say much at first, just listened. Then she reviewed my documents, flipping each page with gentle precision. Yellow highlighter, blue pen. She clicked her mouse a few times, then looked up and said evenly, "They used your name to secure a business loan last year." I blinked. "I never signed anything." "You didn't have to," she replied. "They used your equity contribution as part of the collateral package." I sat back. My throat was dry. "Is that legal?" "It's gray," she said. "Technically defensible, ethically disgusting." She tapped the document. "They're operating on your credit and your silence. If they're leveraging your name while cutting you out of everything else, you've got more than grounds to act." She offered to draft an NDA while I decided how to move forward. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But I left with a slim blue folder and something else I hadn't carried in years: leverage. That night, I didn't pace or scream or call anyone. I changed into sweats, sat cross-legged in my bedroom, and opened a contact I hadn't messaged in over a decade. Master Granton Wells, retired Marine, my father's old friend, the first person who ever taught me to square my stance and breathe through being hit. I typed just 2 sentences. "I want to train again." The reply came in 10 minutes. "Be here before dawn. Bring your belt." And just like that, something shifted. Not from fury, not from revenge, from alignment. The Boston Open smelled like sweat, nerves, and bleach, like every other competition hall I'd ever stepped into years ago. But this time, I wasn't the invisible woman behind the camera or the clipboard. My name was printed on the bracket. Alternate black belt division, legal, earned. 3 matches passed before the announcement rang out. Due to a last-minute withdrawal, alternate Eilis Corbin has been placed in match 42. My breath stilled. Match 42, Cade's bracket. I walked toward the mat slowly, purposefully. I could feel the stares, the whispers. A couple of people pulled out phones murmuring, "Isn't that the woman from that training video?" Across the mat, Cade stood tall, arms crossed, expression unreadable until he saw me. His smirk bloomed, sharp as ever. He leaned toward the ref, whispered something, then looked at me like I was a scheduling error he intended to correct. I bowed, clean, controlled. Not to him, but to the moment. He returned the bow half-heartedly. "Didn't think they'd let charity cases in the black belt bracket," he muttered. I didn't reply. The referee signaled. Cade lunged immediately, predictable, arrogant. His weight came forward, too fast, too greedy. I sidestepped, redirected his momentum, and gripped his collar. My body remembered what my pride had forgotten. Balance, breath, timing. I felt the shift, the exact moment his weight overcommitted. That was all I needed. Arm drag, drop, hook, drive, tap. The whistle blew. 14 seconds. For a full heartbeat, there was only silence, thick and suspended, as if the world had to reboot itself to process what it just witnessed. Then came the clap, slow, then another. Then the hush broke into quiet disbelief. Cade rolled to his knees, chest heaving. He didn't look at me, didn't bow. He stood and walked off the mat, past the official, past the crowd, through the gym doors like a man walking away from his own shadow. I remained kneeling, not out of pain, not for show, just breathing, present. Then I bowed again, this time to the scar I'd carried, the silence I'd swallowed, the version of me that had waited too long to fight back. At the edge of the mat stood Master Wells. He didn't clap, didn't smile, just nodded once and said, "That's what it means to hold your line." Behind him, I saw Morena frozen at the barrier. Her eyes wide, her mouth just barely open like a speech had been ripped from her lips before she could give it. I didn't speak to her. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached into my gym bag and pulled out a gray towel, creased, faded, and still stained faintly with Tiger Balm. The one Cade once threw at my feet like I was there to clean up after him. I walked to the exact spot where he'd swept me in front of the whole class weeks ago, where they laughed, where I fell, where the video went viral. I folded the towel in half, then again, and laid it there, no words, no vengeance, just presence. Then I walked off the mat. The clip of me defeating Cade was everywhere by the next morning, not just on tournament highlight reels, but on martial arts forums, Instagram reels, Reddit threads. Strangers were remixing the video, captioning it with things like 14 seconds of justice, or from punching bag to black belt. I didn't post any of it. I didn't say a word. I let it spread without interference. But I should have known silence would threaten the wrong people. 2 days later, a post appeared on a prominent martial arts board. Manipulated sympathy, manufactured strength. It was a takedown piece, sloppy but loud. The author accused me of playing victim to gain a competitive edge, insinuated I had pulled strings to get into the black belt bracket, called the match orchestrated humiliation. The article was stitched together with freeze frames, out-of-context clips, and captions like, "She milked it. This is what happens when mediocrity meets marketing." I didn't flinch. I didn't even feel anger. Just a cold, steady clarity. I gathered my paperwork. The ownership agreement, the recurring bank charges, the loan statements. I added my black belt certification, my Marine training credentials, and the official tournament placement letter from the Boston Open. Every screenshot, every timestamp, every name. I sent it all. To the tournament board, the forum moderators, and the National Martial Arts Association. 3 hours later, the post vanished. 5 hours after that, the site issued a formal apology. We regret the publication of unverified and defamatory content. The athlete in question remains in good standing. Her credentials are valid. The match result is legitimate. There were no hashtags, no trending tweets, but for once, silence didn't mean erasure. It meant retraction. That Friday, I sat at the head of a long oak conference table at a community bank. The board of Apex Dojo had called an emergency session. 5 members in the room, 2 more on Zoom. Master Wells sat beside me, not as legal counsel, but as my witness. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but grounded. She was there when the first mat was laid, when the walls were painted, when Morena nearly backed out of the lease because the loan wouldn't go through. A lease funded that bridge, and then she was pushed off it. Then the Boston Open official spoke. I was there. Her match was fair. Her credentials, verified. The result, earned. The vote wasn't close. 5-2. Morena was removed as executive director. Cade was banned indefinitely from all Apex-affiliated events and media. One of the board members looked at me and asked, "Will you be stepping in?" I shook my head. I'm not here to replace anyone. I just want what's mine returned, my name, my stake, and the respect that should have never been erased. That night, my phone buzzed. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Morena. There was no hello, just her voice, brittle and small. You've always had a way of making me feel like I wasn't enough. I didn't argue. I didn't comfort her. I never needed you to feel small, I said gently. I just needed to exist beside you. She didn't respond, just a pause. Then the line went dead. I set the phone down, breathed in, then out. Some people mistake silence for surrender. But this silence wasn't weakness. It was closure on my terms. A padded envelope arrived at the clinic 2 days later. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My father's, clean, slanted, careful. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, folded into thirds. To Elise, the one who never needed applause to lead. Let them come second. You've always been first where it counted. Dad. I didn't cry right away. I held the page in both hands, like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. Then, slowly, the tears came. Quiet. No sobbing, no shaking. Just warm rivers tracing a story I no longer needed to explain to anyone. That evening, I didn't text Morena back. I didn't post. I didn't reply to the whispers online that had turned into clumsy praise now that they'd seen what I could do. Instead, I went home, rolled out the same mat in my living room that I'd trained on for months, and set my phone up on a small tripod. I knelt in the center. No words, no pose, no angle. I reached for the gray towel, the one Cade once tossed at my feet like a punchline, the one I laid on the mat in Boston like a flag. I folded it slowly, precisely, then laid it beside me. I hit record. 30 seconds of silence. Then I stopped the video, uploaded it to my private channel. No caption, no hashtags, just a woman claiming her space. 6 months later, I run a small training program out of an old community center in New Haven. The mats shift when you step too hard, and the fluorescent lights hum even when they're off. But it's mine. We train twice a week, not for trophies, not for belts, for breath, for balance, for the feeling of standing in your own skin and knowing you belong there. A retired teacher, a nurse recovering from surgery, a mother who left an abusive home. None of them care about followers or titles. They just want to feel strong again. Last Thursday, a new face showed up at the doorway. Hoodie, no eyeliner, eyes down. Claire. She didn't say much, just, "Didn't know you taught here." I shrugged. "I don't advertise." She nodded. "I didn't know how badly I needed to be taught by someone who doesn't need to be seen." She stayed, sat through the class, watched in silence. And when it ended, she bowed, not to me, but to the room, to the moment. That was enough. The next morning, another letter came. "I watched your video. I finally saw you. I hope it's not too late." Morena. I didn't reply. I folded the note carefully and placed it in the same wooden box where my father's letter now lives. Not forgiveness, not closure, just acknowledgement. Because sometimes power doesn't look like shouting or winning or even fighting. Sometimes power is laying your towel down on a mat and knowing you'll never need to prove your place there again.